real flaw here in the logic. Imagine that you are asked to draw a circle that includes all of the knowledge that will ever be determined about the universe in every possible sphere. I think all of us would draw a very large circle. Now draw within that circle what you know. Would that not be a subset? A very small one, I think, unless one is afflicted with great arrogance, a very small subset indeed. Now suppose that the knowledge of the existence of God is outside of your circle. That has a serious mathematical likelihood when you consider the proportionalities here. How then can it be a logical statement to say, I know with certainty that there is no God? That seems like the strongest kind of fallacy. Agnosticism, I grant you, a more intellectually honest approach. Strong atheism, to say there can be no God and I know that's the case, falls apart on the altar of logical debate, and really, I think, ought to be considered as its own form of blind faith.
We've got to answer that. We've got to challenge that.
Well, I don't know why anybody would assert that what you call strong atheism.
Oh, has Professor Dawkins not done so?
No.
The God delusion?
Oh, we have a convert.
This is truly ridiculous. This is truly ridiculous. I accept wholeheartedly that the circle of things that I know is minute compared to the circle of things which might be known. There's an enormous amount that we don't know. It could include all kinds of weird things, and it certainly will. But it's highly unlikely that it will just happen to include Jupiter or Thor or Yahweh. I mean, why would one think that it would assume these petty, parochial little things that in history people have happened to have thought about?
Highly unlikely or
it's going to be
Highly unlikely.
highly unlikely.
Ah. So you're an
Not
agnostic.
the flying spaghetti monster's not impossible.
We're agnostic about that.
I think you have to be careful to separate from true faith, you know, the myriad of myths that have come about through permutations of religion for control of people. And just because those exist doesn't mean that there isn't a God and doesn't mean that there isn't legitimate faith. I think you just have, you can't throw them all into one basket and say, because that's so ridiculous, the rest of it is too.
I think we have time for 2 more questions, so let's start right here.
Great. So this panel is about science and religion, but, my name is Lori Zephyrin. I'm actually a medical doctor as well, and I'm a White House Fellow this year. So this panel is about science and religion. Ultimately, what influences our thought on religion are our cultural beliefs, our experiences growing up. And it'd be interesting to get an understanding of how one is able to separate those experiences from the scientific facts. And I don't know if Dr. Carson and Dr. Dawkins, since there seems to be some polar opposites there, can comment on some of their experiences and how they're able to separate that from some of their scientific beliefs.
Well, experiences are clearly what have given me my faith in God. You know, you'd have to read my books.
I've read your book.
We're selling a lot of books here today.
And you would begin to recognize that, for instance, you know, as a teenager, I was a completely out of control, angry person trying to stab people. And, you know, I had an experience one day. And I began to recognize at that point that there was something else outside of me. And I began to connect myself with that, and my life completely changed. And some people say that's baloney. You have to experience it yourself.
Dr. Dennet, do you want to jump in there? Or you?
Oh, I thought Richard
I don't think that my personal experiences are of the slightest interest to anybody. I care about what's true, and that means I care about evidence. And my personal, anecdotal, private experiences are not evidence for anything.
Just in summary, if we can even embark on a summary, I just want to give each of you 15 seconds to let us know whether you think we are any further along in resolving this debate today than we were 100 years ago, 2,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago? And I'll start with you, Ben.
Okay, well, in 15 seconds, I would simply ask people to ask yourself the question. You know, I was talking earlier today about risk. Ask yourself the question, if there is a God, what is the risk of not believing in him versus believing in him? If there is no God, what is the risk of believing in him versus not believing in him? Ask yourself that question tonight while you're in bed.
As I was flying through a thunder lightning storm last night from California to California, I know how I answered that question. Dr. Dawkins.
Dr. Carson has just invoked what's known as Pascal's wager. It assumes that the God that confronts you when you reach the pearly gates is indeed a God who cares passionately about whether you believe in him. If I were God, I wouldn't care so much whether somebody believed in me as whether I was a good person, whether I was an honest person, whether I spent my life honestly seeking the truth. And if, as Bertrand Russell said when somebody asked him, what would you say if you found yourself confronted by God? God challenged you and said, why didn't you believe in me? Russell said, not enough evidence, God, not enough evidence. And God would... I think any God worth worshipping would respect that far more than somebody who believed in him just because it was the safe option to do so.
Dr. Dennet.
Dr. Carson speaks about risk, and I approve wholeheartedly of his encouraging you to take a risk. And here's a risk I want to encourage you to take. Risk subjecting your own faith to scientific study. Let science lead, as Dr. Kierstead said earlier today. If your faith is strong enough, it should be able to withstand a very careful scrutiny of how it arose, how it evolved, why it sits in your brain the way it does, how it defends itself. Are you ready to subject your faith to the same sort of scientific scrutiny that you're prepared to address to the other problems in your life? I think you should risk it.
Dr. Collins.
Albert Einstein famously said, religion without science is blind. I think Professor Dennet was making that argument that you need to apply great reason and logic to faith. I strongly agree with that. The second part of Einstein's comment was that science without religion is lame. Clearly, there are many ways of knowing. Science is one of them. As you've listened to this discussion, I hope it's caused some self-examination about what do you believe and why do you believe it. There can be no more important question that you'll wrestle with during this weekend or for the rest of your life than is there a God? Don't put that off until some personal crisis like a thunderstorm on the airplane or advancing age force you to reconsider that you never really gave serious thought to that issue. My bet is, if you look at it, you may surprise yourself about where you come out.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you.